Hi there, it's Llarold, and today I'm covering how to play Brewmaster Monk in patch 8.1. I'll start out this video by covering what's changed for the class, not much, and then I'll move on to how to play, spec, and gear. If you are looking for a little more detail on Brewmaster Monk or Protection Warrior, check out the class guides I've written for Wowhead on either spec, or both. So beginning with changes to Brewmaster, there aren't that many. Brewmasters have been the best tank in Old Year, and they're very decent Mythic Plus as well. As a result, they haven't really needed anything in the way of buffs. Now, I'd never argue in favor of them needing nerfs, but a small nerf is what they've gotten. And it takes Monks from being the #1, no question best overall raid tank, to still very good raid tanks. Monks look like they'll probably remain the best overall raid tank in 8.1, but maybe some other classes will get their opportunities to shine on some of the fights in Battle of Dazara lore. So now to the actual specifics of the changes. Base stagger contribution from agility was reduced, and Iron Skin Brew's stagger increase was buffed. This all equates to about a 3% reduction in overall stagger value while you have Iron Skin Brew active. That's a bit, but it's definitely not enough to dethrone Monks. It does make letting Iron Skin Brew fall off considerably more punishing, which it should be. There's really nothing wrong with that end of the change. New Zal's Blessing, which was an atrocious Azurite trait with not really a great name, was replaced with straight No Chaser, which is a great Azurite trait with a great name. Straight No Chaser is about 65% as strong as Gemhide and can provide a lot of free brews over the course of a fight. The only drawback it has is that it's a defense-only option in the outer ring of traits, which is a spot where you can add a lot of damage. If you need extra defense, it's there, and it's a much better option than the old horrible trait that it's replacing. And here are two tiny changes. Azurite Fortification is being replaced by Exit Strategy, a weird roll trait. Since it's in the inner ring of traits where Gemhide resides, this probably won't get used. And finally, Black Ox Statue's radius was reduced from 30 yards to 20. This will make it a little bit weaker at picking up ads during raid fights, but also makes it less prone to pulling unwanted ads in dungeons. Whatever. This change doesn't really matter. Now that we've covered the handful of changes, let's move on to how to play the class. In terms of rotation, gearing, and Azurite, not much has changed, but since I haven't gone into full detail on how to properly play Brewmaster and BFA since release, let's take a deep dive in. The single target and AoE priority for Brewmaster are pretty much the exact same. Keg Smash is king. Maintaining rushing Jadewind as much as possible is also very important when you're trying to maximize damage output. As for managing brews, you should maintain Iron Skin Brew as close to 100% uptime as possible. This shouldn't be difficult at all, and if you are struggling to keep it going, this means you're A, using Purifying Brew too often, B, not keg smashing enough, or C, both A and B. Make no mistake, Purifying Brew is an important part of your defensive toolkit, but it's virtually never more important than maintaining Iron Skin Brew while you're actively tanking. In terms of when and how to successfully use it, the best spots are predictable burst damage, such as when Fetid Devourer uses Terrible Thrash, or raging enemies in Mythic Plus dropping below 30% health and doing double damage. Outside of that, just try to use Purifying Brew at any old time that your stagger gets pretty high. Finally, with regards to Brewmaster self-healing, there isn't a lot of it. When you cumulatively take your full health and damage, you generate a Gift of the Ox Orb. That damage taken is counted pre-stagger, so let's say you had 80% stagger and you get hit for twice your health pool pre-stagger. You would immediately create 2 healing spheres, take 40% of your health and damage, and stagger the remaining 160% of your health. You'd probably want to purify that right away, and if your health got knocked any lower by stagger ticking or more incoming damage, you'd want to walk over the healing spheres to try and help heal that damage back up. You can also use Expel Harm as a snap heal whenever orbs are out of your reach, but you generally don't want to rely on it as much as just simply picking up the orbs with your feet. Now let's quickly go over talents. Here's a one-size-fits almost all talent setup. In the first tier, Chi Burst is a bit better for AoE DPS, making it a good option in Mythic Plus. Eye of the Tiger is easier to use, of course, and much better for single target damage, so it is usually a good bit better in raids. In the third tier, Black Ox Brew is a noticeably better talent for brew generation, and slightly better for damage output over the course of a fight. It gets punished much more heavily by downtime than light brewing, and it is a bit more complicated to use for a fairly modest gain. As a result, I would say that unless you're an elite player trying to push your DPS to its absolute limits, you can get away with using light brewing, and not only will no one be able to notice a difference, your brew management will be significantly easier. In the fourth tier, Ring of Peace is an amazing skill for knockback utility. It's extremely strong. I don't really have a lot more to add, but people have complained in the past when I failed to mention it, and they're right, it's good. Good is what it is. Moving on. In tier 5, Bob and Weave is the best talent 99% of the time. But if you really want some extra self-healing or another defensive cooldown, you've got options. Now on to gearing. Here is the stat priority. Versatility is pretty close to tied with crit, but because it tends to be available on way less gear, you'll generally wind up with a lot less verse than crit. That tends to make verse, enchants, and gems slightly more valuable. One quick note before moving on from gear, if you are looking to maximize your DPS, and why wouldn't you, get a Dark Moon deck Fathoms. It's insanely powerful for its item level. Most other trinkets can't compete with it until they're at least 400 item level. It's a great DPS trinket for every tank, but Brewmasters have such an abundance of defenses that they can afford to wear a lower item level damage proc trinket that will do tremendous amounts of damage. The only drawback is that a Dark Moon card is only 355 item level, so Heroic and Mythic Battle of Dazar lore trinkets are going to heavily outclass it. Still though, it will compete with anything in the game until that raid is out. Now let's move on to Azurite traits. Much like with the Dark Moon deck, Brewmasters are in a unique position as tanks when it comes to Azurite traits. They have several great defensive traits to choose from on the outer ring, or they can just shoot for offensive traits in the outer rings and really add a lot of damage. More important than any of that, by far, is Gem Hide. That's right, Gem Hide. That simple inner ring trait is the secret sauce that makes Brewmasters so tanky. Depending on your item level and what you're tanking, 3 ranks of Gem Hide can easily be worth well over 5% damage reduction from armor. More importantly, because the 10% requirement to trigger Gem Hide is calculated before armor and stagger are taken into account, it's up virtually all of the time that you're tanking anything remotely challenging. Gem Hide isn't mandatory in every slot by any means, and I definitely wouldn't recommend sacrificing a bunch of item level to get it, but it is a great trait whenever you can get it. Now that Gem Hide is out of the way, if you're looking to add more defenses in Tier 1, Elusive Footwork is a very solid single-target offensive option that grants a really good defensive value as well. Boiling Brew provides a significant amount of self-healing, which is where monks struggle the most, and it's a very modest increase to your AoE DPS. Training of Nu Zhao is a bit of an odd trait. It's simple, and it's great at reducing physical damage taken, really the best and most versatile Tier 1 trait for that particular job, and it's very nearly worthless against spell damage. Oh well. Finally in Tier 1, the new trait, Straight No Chaser, is a very good, simple, reliable armor increase whenever you have Iron Skin Brew active, so basically 100% of the time. And again, just generally, if you're wanting to maximize your damage proc traits in Tier 1 are the way to go. And here we end up on Tier 2, the middle children of Azurite traits. Shouts to middle children, I'm one. We shouldn't be overlooked, even though we probably will. Gut Ripper and Heed My Call are a couple of standout offensive choices. Due to the stupid Mistweaver healing traits, Brewmasters don't get as many good offensive options available to them for Tier 2. Crystal and Carapace is an okay defensive option, although it's not worth as much armor as Gem Hide or Straight No Chaser, and the reflect damage component is very mild. Azurite Veins is a very nice self-healing option in Tier 2, if you're looking to go defensive, and the humongous burst of armor Ablative Shielding provides at low health is a really decent reactive cooldown as well. Well, I think that about covers it. If you have any questions about Brewmaster Monk, ask away. Stay tuned for more Patch 8.1 content, and as always, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Bye.